saw the activity on the
Yeah,
WhatsApp.
I'm just doing my best to bring back votes.
Thank you for doing that. For all we know, that may be the thing that changes.
Yeah, imagine if they won by like 15 votes.
Oh, well. There'd be so much uproar, it'd be like 50,000 recounts.
Okay. All right. So we were talking, just going through, yeah, thanks. Just going through some general principles as our introduction to the laws of stealing. Stealing from a non-Jew is just as biblically prohibited as stealing from a Jew. Yesh omrim adam hagozel et hagoy o ha'oshko chayiv lahachzir lo. Now, as far as restitution, when you steal from a non-Jew, some say you have the same obligation of restitution. V'yesh omrim she'ein mitzvahs hashava b'gereva o b'gzelat hagoy mehatorah ela dafka b'makom sheyesh chilul Hashem. There's another opinion that the reason for making restitution is not because of the biblical law of stealing, but rather based on the idea of chilul Hashem. That if I don't make restitution, it could be technically there's no legal obligation of restitution once I have stolen from a Gentile. But if there's a chilul Hashem involved, then I have an obligation. And this is, okay. Isser hato'oyaskoy, the prohibition of deceiving, because remember, deceiving is a form of stealing, right? So yesh omrim sha'asr lahatot et hagoy b'mishkalo b'mida u b'cheshbon. One opinion is that there's no difference between a Jew and a non-Jew as far as deceptive practice regarding weights and measures. V'hamat'ehu nechshav keganav mamash va'over ba'aseh keshem sha'over b'Yisrael. And any kind of deceptive business practice is a biblical violation of a positive commandment, no different from what you do to a Jew. V'im hagoy ta'ame atzmo mutar uvilvad sheyomer lo re'ei al cheshboncha ani somech. The only difference between a Jew and a non-Jew is that if my Jew, the Jew that I'm doing business with, makes an error in my favor, I'm obligated to correct him. But if a non-Jew makes an error in my favor, I'm not obligated to correct him as long as I tell him, I'm relying on your count or I'm relying on your measure. Vimlo amar lo aser. But if you don't say that explicitly to him, then you would not be able to accept an error in your favor from the non-Jew. Why? Shema mitkavein hagoy b'ta'uto livdok et Yisrael v'nimtza shem shemai mitchalel. Because then you have to worry that maybe he's doing it to test you, and he wants to see how honest are the Jews, and then there'll be a chilul Hashem. So a classic example is the cashier at the supermarket. Yeah. So, as the poskim say, I think we saw this from the Be'er Hagola, if I'm not mistaken. He says, I've seen many people profit from returning errors that were in their favor to a non-Jew. I've never seen people profit from benefiting from those errors. And that's his way of saying it's just not worth it. He says, V'yesh cholkim va'omrim. There are others who opine that based on the letter of the law, shemuter lahatot et hagoy b'cheshbono lahafkia halva'ato, v'chol ze b'tenai shlo yivada lo logoy achar kach. That it would be permissible to deceive a non-Jew as far as the count, or to not pay him back a debt, provided that he'll never know about it. Aval im barur she'achar kach yargish b'ta'ut. But if, and this, of course, this is one of the most controversial aspects of Choshen Mishpat when we study these laws. And it's something that I find personally to be very disturbing, right? But we learn it nonetheless because it's part of the corpus of Torah, and we have to understand when are we within our rights and when are we not within our rights. If it is clear that he's going to potentially find out about it Asr mipnei chilul Hashem, ve'im ta'a hagoy me'atzmo mutar. Then it would be prohibited because of a chilul Hashem, unless he makes the mistake on his own, and you know he's not doing it for deceptive purposes. V'yesh shenir midivreim she'eno tzarech lomar re'ei al cheshboncha nisomech, ela kol ze mimidat chasidut kishomer lo v'im lo amar lo ein iser b'davar. Some say you don't have to tell him, I'm relying on your count. It's just considered to be the proper thing to do, but it's not obligatory. He says, if, however, with all of that notwithstanding, if a person were to return an error in his favor to the Gentile across the table, or if he returns a lost object to a Gentile, which we learned in the laws of Hashava Saveda, that you're not technically obligated to do that, and your kavana is to sanctify Hashem, so that the Jews will be lauded as being trustworthy people. This is praiseworthy. But if you're only doing it because you have compassion upon the non-Jew, or that or in order that they will praise you personally, not the Jews, but you personally, then you should not return it. So again, what's disturbing about this? That's self-evident, but what does that mean? If I've trained myself over decades of being honest in business, that I'm not going to be dishonest with a goy, and my intention is just because I think it's proper to be honest, and not because I want to make a Kiddush Hashem, that I'm not allowed to return it. That doesn't seem right. So there's clearly something deficient in the way that this is being presented. I want to remind you that whenever we see something like this coming out of an Israeli author, a lot of times it's because of a cultural divide between Jews of the diaspora in the 21st century and Jews in Israel, who really don't have very much interaction with non-Jews, especially the people who are writing some of this halacha. So it's important to note that, and they're writing academically based on texts that existed in the 1600s, where
Maybe they're talking about Hamas.
Or maybe talking about anti-Semitic goyim, right? And so I could easily see someone writing this about Gentiles who are innately anti-Semitic, and it's a mitzvah to cheat them, and don't think that they're ever going to like you, no matter what you do, they're never going to like you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, with all of that said,
deep breath.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still not good.
Yeah. So as far as we're concerned, for our purposes of studying these halachas, you should definitely go according to the first opinion, which is definitely more machmir, as being equitable in the way that you deal in business, and do not make any distinctions between Jews and non-Jews. Never try to capitalize off of a mistake or the ignorance that is made by a person that you're dealing with in business, regardless of whether they're Jew or non-Jew. Okay. Next. Okay. Shliach l'gzeila below yediato. If a person became a messenger to perform an act of gezela, which means that, in other words, you're part of a scheme and you don't realize it. Okay, so this could potentially happen all the time. I'm a broker on a deal, and one of the sides is committing fraud, and I have no way of knowing that, right? Mi shenasa shliach ve'eno yodeya sheyesh avera b'shlichuto. Let's say someone has been appointed as a shaliach, a proxy, and he has no idea that there's an avera involved in his proxyship. Kigon shamar haganav lishlucho shor okaf. I'm not sure. Misuyam yeshli beveit ploni kachehu. he says, he says to his friend, go to Yankel's house. He has my ox, or he has a spoon of mine in his drawer. V'tiyal of shomer, and hold on to it until I get back into town. V'hotziu hashomer, I could easily see, go into John's garage. He's got my lawnmower. Just bring it, put it into your garage, and when I get back from my trip, I'll come and pick it up from you. So v'hotziu hashomer b'beis haba'alim, and so the fellow does it, and takes it out of the fellow's house. Umeis hashor o nishbar hakaf, and then the ox dies or the spoon breaks. Im hashaliach shogeg ve'ena yodea sheyesh avera b'shlichuto, if the shliach really is completely innocent and does not know that he has committed a sin, yesh omrim shahashaliach patur v'hamashaleach chayav. Some say that the shaliach is patur, and the guy who gave him instructions to do an act of theft is the one who's liable. V'yesh omrim sha'af b'shogeg ein shliach litvar avera. Some, however, say that we apply the principle of ein shliach litvar avera, which means there's no such thing as saying that I'm merely a proxy of someone else's avera. If someone tells me, go ahead and steal, and I steal for them, you can't say that I was just following orders, right? In other words, and the reason is because the Gemara says, divrei harav v'divrei hatalmid divrei mishomim. When God tells you do one thing, and a human being tells you another thing, why would you listen to the human being over God?
Even give it up, that's what we say. It's when you don't have to give it up if your parent is telling you something different.
Correct. Yes, correct. And but it's applied here also. That's the reason why ein shliach lidvar avera. There's no such thing as being a proxy of some. Like if you hire a hitman, that the hitman can't say. And by the way, this is different in secular law. If I hire an assassin to kill somebody, to kill my friend, I could be held liable for first-degree murder on some level, right?
Yeah.
But in Jewish law, if I hire an assassin to kill my friend, then I'm not liable at all, because this guy should have listened to God that says you shall not murder. He can't, right? He can't say, well,
hire a mafioso guy, non-Jew.
No, but still, in shliach lidvar avera.
Wow.
It could be
Not that
that,
I'm getting any ideas.
yeah. I mean, it could be that at some point, maybe there would be liability in Jewish law also, if you're hiring someone who's a mafioso.
Yeah.
But that's the technical law. So the question now becomes, what if the person is unsuspecting and isn't even aware that he's violating God's word? So you can't really apply that logic of divrei harav, divrei hatalmid, divrei mishomim. So some say that you still say ein shliach lidvar avera, that there's no such thing as a proxy for sin. Va'av shelo shayach bo divrei harav, divrei hatalmid, divrei mishomim, even though we can't apply that principle because the fellow is totally unaware. Nevertheless, gezeras hakasavi she'ena yachol lehe also shliach litvar avera. Some learn, and he's quoting here the Ritva, that you still don't apply that principle of a proxyship. So there's a dispute here whether someone can be a proxy and pin it back on the dispatcher of that task if he was unaware that it's an avera. This is a machlokas. So
didn't we also learn in Kosher Mishpat that it was the even if somebody asks you to do something, it's your responsibility to act. Like let's say that you're asked to go and take the lawnmower out of somebody's garage, so go and put it in your garage. So there's a responsibility for you to knock on the door of the person you're taking it from and tell them you're taking the lawnmower, or at least advise them that's what you're doing, because I mean, otherwise.
well, what if the other guy's not home? No one's home.
Then you still have access to their garage.
Yeah,
Even
it happens all the time. I mean, I don't know if it happens all the time.
You
Just,
never know. There were, I mean, either that will come back later, I don't know. I mean, there has to be some responsibility that you're sure of what you're doing is correct.
Well, that's the question. Do I have to suspect that the person who told me to go into John's house and get the lawnmower is a thief?
Might not even be that, it's just a practice that you're making sure that what you're doing is the right thing. So you're not doubting that the person's a thief, you're just making sure that what you're doing is the right thing. You're confirming.
Well,
if
if he's not a thief, then
then there's no problem.
no, that's what I'm saying is that am I obligated? It would seem that I'm not obligated to suspect that a person who I know is committing an avera. Everyone has an assumption of being a righteous person unless proven otherwise. Yeah, right. So why should I assume this fellow tells me he's out of town, I'm out of town, he borrowed my lawnmower, I just want to bring it back into your garage because he's out of town also. I'm worried that someone's going to come and take it. So do me a favor, go get the lawnmower, bring it into your garage, lock it up. And when I get back, I'll come and pick it up from you. Very innocent. There's no one for me to check. I trust this person. You can create that kind of scenario where there's no way for him to verify the facts. And so he really is an innocent party here.
Like Paul said, leave a notice to say I took it, whatever.
Yeah, but by that time it's too late. Let's say something happens to it, the garage burns down or it gets broken, whatever it is. What's his liability? That's the question.
Then you take him that then becomes a showman question, right?
Yeah.
What level of guardianship you're obliged to.
That's right. And in a case of theft, when I steal something, I always have the highest level of guardianship, which is not the case if I'm a legitimate shomer. So that's the reason why this becomes a question in halacha. Okay. Now, mitzvahs hashava b'pachos mishava pruta. Is there an obligation to steal, to return what you've stolen when you've stolen less than a pruta, which is a few pennies? Adam shegazol mechavero chafatzim rabim. If a person has stolen several items from his friend, ubala hachzir hakol chutz mipachos mishava pruta, and he wants to return everything, except he wants to short him by a few pennies on one item that he stole. Chayiv lahachzir gam et hadavar she'eino shava pruta. Since you're already under the obligation to return everything else, you have to return that item even though it's worth less than a shava pruta. Afal pishu pachos mishava pruta. V'yesh kan mitzvahs hashava, keven shemitchila gazal yoter mishava pruta v'adayin lo hechzer et kol ma shelakav. So even though normally we paskin that when one who steals less than a shava pruta, that offense is not actionable. But if I stole a bunch of things from him, and like cumulatively, it comes out to like several, maybe hundreds of dollars. But if I were to short him, let's say I stole 100 widgets from him, and each widget is worth, or let's say I stole 1,000 widgets from him, and each widget is worth less than a shava pruta, but cumulatively, 1,000 widgets are worth $100 or $10. I have to return the entire amount. I can't say, well, I'll keep one little widget for myself. It's less than a shava pruta. That you're not allowed to do. Once you have an obligation to return, you have to return the full amount. Okay. Next, another principle. Ein haganav loke al gezelato. A ganav does not get lashes in addition to the obligation to return. Ein lokim alav shelo tigzol shreya katuv nitko la'aseh shim gazol chayav la'achzir. The Torah, even though normally any act which involves a violation of a mitzvah lo saseh, a negative commandment, you get lashes for, but that's only true if the Torah does not provide the remedy. Here the Torah provides the remedy. He who steals shall return the item. Shenemar ve'eshiv et hagzela asher gazal. V'zu mitzvah taseh, and that's therefore a positive commandment that undoes the violation. V'lav hanitak la'aseh in lokin alav, and therefore you don't get lashes for that. V'afilu im saref et hagzela eino loka shehari chayiv l'shalem damea. And even if I end up destroying the item that I stole, I still don't get lashes because the Torah then creates a debt of a monetary amount that I thereby rectify the offense. The cholav hanitak litashlumin in lokin alav, and any negative commandment that is converted into payment, you don't get malchus for. Because we never find double jeopardy of both paying and getting lashes. She'ein onshim et ha'adam b'shnei onshim, kevin sha'torah chayivato b'tashlumim memela ein alok. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. It doesn't have any applications anyway because the Beis Din does not administer lashes nowadays. Okay, next principle. We've seen a lot of this already, so we're just going through it quickly. Gozel umitkaven l'shalem tumurat hachefetz. Stealing with the intent to make restitution. In other words, I don't want to cause this guy monetary loss, but he's not around now, and I really need this. So I'll break in, let's say a guy says, I need medication for someone sick in my home. I'm going to go break into the pharmacy and steal the medication, and I'll pay him back later. I'm sure, I'll make good on it, even though what I'm doing is an act of theft now, but I'll make good on it later. Asr ligzol o lignov afshe kavanato l'shalim l'balim timarto. So that's prohibited by the Torah. O davar yafa mimenu, even if your intention is to give him something better in quality. Kamo shematzinu eitzel anshe David sheratzu likach gadish shel seorim v'litein b'mekamo gadish shel adashim. There's a story in the Navi about King David's men. I guess when they were traveling as an army, they wanted to appropriate a pile of barley with the intent of paying back a pile of lentils, which was more valuable back then. I wonder what the differential in price is today. But back then, barley was not considered to be animal food. It was considered to be purely, it was not considered to be human food. It was only purely animal feed. And that's why it was considered to be a cheaper commodity. Whereas lentils was something that people ate. Today, barley is very, very popular food because we've learned how to pearl barley. Pearling barley was like a technology that changed the entire barley industry. Okay.
And beer.
Yeah, and making beer from barley, right? Uchemamar Hanavi, Chevel Yashiv, Rasha, Gezela Yeshale, or Chevel Yashiv Resha, something like this. That if a person commits an offense that is evil, is that it is considered evil even when he pays back what he stole. Afal pi shahgezela yishalem nikra Rasha, meaning even though he's prepared even at the outset to pay back whatever he's stolen, he's still considered evil. Even when your intention was originally to pay that back. Now, obviously, there are going to be exceptions to this rule, like the famous car chases, or where a guy's running through the markets and he got to grab a stick or an umbrella to do kung fu against the guy who's chasing him, or whatever chase scenes you can conjure in your mind. He'll pay back the umbrella later, but he's saving his life in the process. So whatever. Okay, but I got too many movies in my head. Yeah, right.
Leave $5 on the counter. I'll pay the rest later.
Yeah.
Is it a factor where the guy would agree anyways, hindsight, he would allow it?
Is it a factor? No, that doesn't make a difference. Even if the person would have agreed, you're still not allowed to take it without his consent. And I guess the point is that, well, look, if he's got a plate on the counter that says, please place money here for purchases, in my absence. So then he's basically saying you have every right to purchase things in his absence because he has a an honor system, right? That he trusts his customers, but most people don't do that. Okay, one more. This is a continuation of this. An object is for sale. It has a fixed price. Price tag is on it. Can I go and take it with the intention of paying afterwards? In other words, here, okay, maybe the circumstances would permit me. So he says as follows: Asur ligzol o lignov chayfetz af shekavanato l'shalim tmurato davar yafa mimenu. As we said, you're not allowed to steal or confiscate an object, even if your intention is to pay back something of better quality later. The yesh hasover, however, some opine, shimrotza l'shalim davar yafa me'achayfetz shenotlo, v'yadua shechayfetz zeh omed li'imacher. Some opine that if the object that you plan to give back is worth more than what you're taking, and you know that this object that is right there on the shelf is for sale, it's something that the merchant, the owner of it, wants to sell, and you have the money ready to pay the guy. It's not that you're going to have to wait until next week to get the money. You have the money right now. It's just that the fellow's not here for you to pay him. Mutter lasos kain. Then it would be permitted to take the object. Kaven shehu yafa min hadavar shalokech, because you're planning to give him something of higher value than what you took. Harezu zechut lebal hachefetz umezaka oto lebalam al yedei acher sheharei zachin laadam shelo b'fanav. So then you're creating not a liability for the merchant, but you're creating an asset for him. So and you could always give the money because you have it in hand. You could basically say, this money that's in my pocket is going to be for that person. And you can create merit for someone even in their absence. So because I'm prepared to overpay for this object, and I know that you would want this, then it would be permissible for me to take it. V'yesh omrim, some further say, kishebarur shahadavar shehu notel omed lihimacher, that when the object that you're taking is clear that it's for sale, it's got a price tag on it, it's in the guy's store. In mishalim domim keneged hadavar shalakho enot tzarich liskos esamam lebalam al yedei acher. And you wouldn't have to, and you have the money available, and you know you're going to pay full price for it, then you don't have to give the actual cash to someone else and say, take possession of this on behalf of the merchant. You can just say, I'm going to pay. Based on this opinion, let's say you go to your local makolet and you want to buy bread or some dairy product, and the store owner hasn't yet arrived. You know, when you go to the makolet, sometimes you'll see, let's say, piles of eggs or loaves of bread outside his store because the bakery or the farm has already delivered the goods, but the makolet hasn't opened yet. And you're on your way to work or whatever, you're in a rush. And what you want to do is you want to take a loaf of bread on your way home from Vasik and Minyan and bring it home because your kids want to have a fresh loaf of bread. But the guy who's selling it isn't there. So the question is, can I take that loaf of bread? And then later on in the day, I'll pay him for the bread that I took. So what would you say in that kind of situation?
I think you can do that.
So his argument is, all right, we'll see tomorrow what the
Cliffhanger.